right, another fantastic performance. You have absolutely amazing hands. But I think in this one, I think the image that you have of it is not exactly correct from my taste. To me, this sounds a lot like the Chopin in terms of sound, but is that what Liszt intended? I don't think so. I mean, that's why he called it La Leggierezza, the lightness. So I think what we're missing in your performance a little bit is a feeling of magic. I almost, when I listen to the best performances of this, I almost see myself in a movie, some kind of maybe a movie about magic where everything is not quite clear and everything is shiny and glittery and not quite real. So when you start this, to me, that sound is very normal. It's just like a person singing. But I wonder if it can be more like, imagine a good witch with, with a magic wand, creating things out of the air. So I think when you start, what if you were to start a little bit softer and slower and like a whisper? Can we try just the beginning like that? It's already better, but we can do even better yet. You know how some pieces, like for example, the Chopin, start with a big bang. Other pieces, like this one, there's an illusion that this piece has been sounding for a long time in the air, but very quiet, so that we didn't hear it, and then suddenly we begin to hear it. In the beginning, only maybe dogs could hear it, but then we begin to hear it. I think that's what we need in the beginning here. The first 3 notes should almost be that if they were any softer, you wouldn't hear them. Can we try to find that magical sound? Just feel like your hand has no bones. Yes, you heard it, right? And something else changed also. The quality of your legato changed. Before I heard da 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 da. Now I heard more, because I think you were overlapping your fingers a little bit more. Just think no bones. I think the image was the best for you, right? I tell my students, do you like spaghetti, noodles, right? Imagine noodles that are raw, not cooked, and noodles that are cooked or overcooked. That's what your hand should be like, a cooked noodle, right? So let's see if we can do that again. And be careful where he says accelerando, that's at the end of the 3rd measure. That doesn't mean you're already fast, right? You're only starting to speed up. There's so many pages and pages to be fast. Enjoy the first page to be slow. Just let it happen little by little, okay? So let's do it one last time, and then we'll go to measure 11, quasi allegretto, and we'll talk about that. About this part now. I thought the beginning was just gorgeous, just delicious. And judging by your smile, you liked it too. But now in the quasi allegretto, now we have the melody. So I think your sound, it's beautiful, but I think it can be much more melodic. So again, I think the legato has to be a little bit more connected. I'm hearing a little bit like, I would like to hear, right? You hear where everything is very connected. I see your arm is very free. So that's beautiful. But try to think about maybe playing with a little bit flatter fingers, not quite, right? So more of your finger goes on the key and gives you a little bit more control. So the sound is like singing. Let's try. I know it's very hard on Zoom. So I thought the way you started the melody again was just beautiful. I think maybe you were a little nervous the first time you played it, because this time things are so much more relaxed and flowing. But then we get to this business. The phrases are always different. Short, long, longer, short. I don't hear too much of a difference. I also am not sure I understand what that means to you. Can you think that maybe there's more than one person singing that? One person goes, second person, first person. So there's a conversation, because too much of it sounds exactly the same. That's very difficult to understand. When everything is exactly the same, sounds like a robot, is very boring, right? So maybe we should slow down a little bit so that you can really hear. Give us a conversation. Pretty much better. But what I feel is every phrase, one of those little things always does a crescendo. Maybe some of them should diminuendo. Maybe. I don't play this one, so I'm just reading. But I think that would give us more of a sense of conversation. Imagine if we talked and at the end of every sentence, our voice went up like that, right? That would be annoying too. So try to see if you can do some open, some close, some open, some close. I thought that was much more interesting. And you can still live with it for a while and see what sort of a conversation these voices are having. Even secretly, come up with some words that these people are saying. Very secret and meaningful words that nobody except for you will know. I think that will be more interesting for you. Okay, so then let's keep going. Then on the next page, when we are in 6, it's the same melody. And I'm hearing almost exactly the same rubato. Is that the plan? Or maybe you should do less rubato, or maybe more rubato this time, I don't know. But I thought it can be much more interesting. I mean, there are 2 notes at the same, so think about some way of making it different for now, just for now. And let's see if we can hear that melody, and let's see if I can tell as the listener what the difference is. Yeah, I heard it. It was a little bit more straightforward and more passionate. That was great. I like it. And you can always have a different decision or a different idea tomorrow. If you decide, as long as it's not the same. But then I want to talk about measures 31 and 32 and 33 in between. I think we need a completely different sound. I think we've had melody, da da dee da da da, that was all like string instruments or a human voice. But then we just had this runny stuff. What if you played it more leggero, less legato, more crisp? Try to see if you can find a new color for that. I was going to talk about the third time we hear the melody, but you already did it beautifully. So we heard the difference 3 times it happens. That was really, really special. Okay, good. So now let's talk about measure 41, the delicamente. Delicatamente. My Italian's terrible. So there, I thought your fingers are fantastic. You can play 1,000,000 notes per second. But what I did hear was how curved this melody was. It all sounded like, you know what I mean? It sounded all like a sewing machine. So I bet we can make something very beautiful from that first. So can we try that part delicamente, but play it very slowly for a moment, just as an exercise, and pretend you're an opera singer on stage at the opera singing this. What would you do? Okay, maybe just right hand if you like. It still sounds a little bit boring to me. So notice how the highest note of each phrase or the lowest notes, they're never in the same place. They're always surprising. But you just go through them like they don't mean anything. I think if you use your arm more on each one, either going up or going down, I think that will make the timing a little bit more interesting. Because right now it sounds like you have a metronome going inside your head. You know what I mean? We don't need one. So let's see if you can be very free right now. Remember, this is only an exercise. So something like, like a opera singer would do. That was beautiful. And I heard, so instead of just a boring straight line, I heard all kinds of surprises and twists and turns. That was gorgeous. And so when you're alone in your practice room, without Zoom, without me, without anyone, you can even sing it and see how your body would, what your body would do when nobody's watching or listening. I think you might really enjoy this in a different way. But I felt like, to me, with those wonderful fingers, you can have much more interesting effects than we got, right? Because, I mean, really, your fingers are fantastic. Okay, so then let's go on to the next page. Do you have measure numbers 53? Leggero con grazia. So once again, to my mind, that didn't have quite enough shaping. I didn't hear where phrases began and when they ended. I would like to. I mean, that's what congrazia means, I think, with elegance, with grace. Can we try? At the beginning of measure 55 is the end of the phrase, right? So you have to end it, da-da-dee-da-ya, and then something new begins. But I felt like you went right through it. So basically the phrase is measure 53 and measure 54, and then it's got to end. So diminuendo, maybe a little bit of ritardando, just a little teeny bit to show us that that's the end. To me, that did not have any grazia in it. Yeah, but it will right now. So I thought those two congrazia phrases were beautiful, just beautiful. You heard it, it's not difficult to do, and it really sounds great. But then, starting in measure 57, it's completely different music, right? Very different. And I would love to hear again a very different sound. So before, everything was rounded, everything was delicate. Here, it's much more straightforward. So I would like a sound that's a little bit more, right? From that beautiful legato before, much more leggero now. Can you create that different sound? Okay, but let's do an exercise. Again, let's do it slower. Can you try those passages staccato, just as an exercise right now? Okay, so now your job, of course, you cannot do it staccato at speed, right? Nobody can. But your job is to make your legato at speed sound like your staccato. So in other words, your fingers really need to be very quick, very sharp. Can you imagine that you have little needles sticking out of your fingertips? Can we do that kind of sound? Yes, that was fantastic. Imagine, I'm not going to ask you to do it right now, but imagine how it will sound after the graceful, beautiful singing phrase. And then we have that stuff. And then the phrase I just stopped to add, that sounds like rain coming down, which you do beautifully. It's really, really excellent. So now for the next couple of pages, your right hand is fantastic. So let's see if we can make the left hand more interesting, right? Because your attention is on your right hand right now, isn't it? But my old teacher used to say that whenever you have a lot of notes that look difficult in one hand, the difficulty, the problem is always in the other. And I find that that's exactly true. I think the left hand is the difficult one here. So can we do, this would be then from measure 60. Can we only do left hand for a moment? Only left hand. crescendo again in every single phrase, which again doesn't make any sense. So if you think about it, the phrase in measure 60 is a crescendo, but the phrase in measure 61 is probably a diminuendo. The crescendo is for your right hand, but the left hand needs to end and then restart. Otherwise, everything we're doing is a crescendo. It's boring. The phrases should be question, answer, right? So we try just the left hand again, and let's see if you can make the phrasing make a little bit more sense. Doesn't that make a lot more sense? I think so, because eventually the phrases break up. They become shorter and the relationship between them changes. It may be really fun to figure out for yourself. Again, when nobody's around, who is asking the question, what's the answer, right? But I want to work on one more thing here. So, but then a completely different voice goes da-da-da in the bass, right? And we should make it sound as different as possible. So how about voicing the bottom note of the octave, not the top, but the bottom, just for da-da-da. So it will sound even darker. Remember, I like basses. I still like them here, just like I did in Chopin. But we should be able to use our instrument. It's easy to do it. It will sound great, I promise. Let's try it. Only the left hand again. Right? How much more interesting it became. And you notice that starting around measure 64, no more diminuendos. Everything is a crescendo, right? But that makes it so much more interesting. Okay, great. Moving on. So measure 70. I think we need to find a more interesting sound for that stuff. Can we do that? Maybe again with the needles in your fingertips? But that sound was actually very exciting. And I was excited all the way up until measure 73, where I became bored because measure 73 did the same thing 4 times. So what do you want to do there? I'm thinking still crescendo and maybe even still stringendo. I think the excitement is still rising, right? Which means you probably cannot get quite so loud before that, because you left yourself no room to grow, right? Can we try that again so that we know the absolute loudest moment is the beginning of measure 74? Because that's where it says diminuendo. That's always the loudest moment. Then now you have to decide in dolcissimo egualmente in 75. You have to decide what kind of sound you want. Do you want that sound with the needles, or do you want the sound of a human voice or something very melodic? Because I'm hearing something in between. I think either one can work, because either one can be made magical, but right now yours is kind of not magical, just human. But don't be human, be a good witch, be a fairy. So let's try both and see which one you like. I mean, it's quiet and it's magical. Imagine sparkles flying around, or maybe a fog. Do you know what I mean? When things are not clear, but just not normal. Something outside of normal. Liszt was so famous for creating these new worlds. You know, let me ask you, do you like the music of Debussy?
Yes.
I mean, who doesn't, right? I think he learned everything from Liszt. I think that magical sound that Debussy creates, I think Liszt created it first. So can we try to play this section as if it really were by Debussy and see what would happen? Just imagine it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't. Right, so you chose that leggera sound, which is great, and it was really, really spectacular. So what occurred to me as I was listening is that around measure 80, you can actually change it a little bit because we're so high up, and you can make it melodic for a little while, for maybe 2 measures, and then go back. Because we never want to be bored with Liszt, right? So if you had quite a few measures now of that kind of sound, so now give us a different sound. Can we try? Let's see if you can show us where you think it becomes a melody. That worked so fantastic the first time you tried it, so that I, as your listener, I'm constantly surprised. I constantly hear new things, and I follow you. Do you know what I mean? You've got me, and you're dragging me with you through this piece. And that's good. We want to do that, right? We're performing artists. Okay, good. So we're almost made it to the end. But basically, that's my comment throughout the whole thing. Decide what sound you want. Do you want that magical sound of sparkles flying around? Or do you want it to sound like a beautiful melody? Because it could be some combination, but you're okay if you decide it's one or the other. So look, just study the last 2 pages with your eyes for a moment, make decisions, and then let's hear it.
From which measure?
So starting somewhere from measure 86 to the end. I see me, if I were playing it, I see a couple of places where I would change that sound. I bet you can find them also. Already beautiful. All right, I have two more ideas. So starting in measure number 90. So the beginning of measure 90, the beginning of measure 91, and the beginning of measure 92 all basically sound the same. Well, don't let them sound the same. I think something should happen. Probably they're getting loud. Probably. That probably also means that you have to be careful in measure 90 not to be too loud already, right? You can also take a different amount of time, ti-da-yada, ti-da-yada, ti-da-da-da, right? So that's one idea. And then the next thing I want you to try is all the way at the end, in measure 95, when we have that melody. You remember we talked in the beginning about overlapping the legato, so it sounds smoother? I think we need that here also. Imagine if you were playing the cello. Right now it sounds like da 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 da, right? But we want da 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 all in the same bow. The only way we can do that on piano is really by overlapping our notes, right? And then maybe again the same thing in the left hand in measure 96. So the three cellos here. Okay, so last time from somewhere around 90 or before 90 to the end. How beautiful is that, right? So exciting. Small things make a very big difference. This is so easy for you, all of these things about sound. You're really listening to yourself, which means that if I had to give you advice for the future, I would say really listen and use your imagination, because between your beautiful instrument and your beautiful hands, there is no limit to all the sounds that you can make. Especially for some people it's hard, but for you, no, it just flows out of you. So I look forward to all the progress you're going to make in the next few years. I look forward to hear you on concert stages all over the world.